Warning, this podcast contains scenes of explicit nonsense and lore.
Previously on the Resident Evil podcast.
I was going to say, Xbox fans are crying out for Umbrella Corps.
Resident Evil has explored so many avenues, I don't even know what Resident Evil is.
It's just one of those things. I think this is just the modern gaming environment we live in.
Thank you, Bloober Team. Silent Hill 2 now hold my beer.
All I know is that wasn't in Bruce's dossier.
Everyone forgets about Zero, don't worry about it.
Nick, you struggle with all controls, let's be honest.
Well, that's true, but...
The Resident Evil Podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 103 of the Resident Evil Podcast, putting 50% tariffs on all Tricell products. Let's make Umbrella great again. I'm Nick, better known as Neptune. Let's see who's joining us today. He's more in depth than a sinkhole in Raccoon City. It's the Batman.
Good evening.
He's heartbroken, ladies and gentlemen. It's Stars Tyrant.
Good evening.
Like the maiden statue in the RPD, he survives everything. It's Romby.
Hello.
No thanks, bro. It's George Trevor.
Hi, good evening.
And he's back. Is he? Who knows? It's Mr. Spencer.
Back like Raccoon City. How's it going?
Coming up on today's podcast, would you, Adam and Eve, at last, Resident Evil 9 or Resident Evil Requiem has been announced, and we're going to go through that teaser trailer, that 3-minute teaser trailer with a fine-tooth comb, discussing our theories, hopes and fears, you name it, you've got it. We'll also be catching up on the news and ending with a rather tricky edition of Neptune's Biohazard quiz. So let's start with the news. First bit of news, of course, is Resident Evil 9, which was announced this week. We'll go through in a lot more detail as the main topic of the podcast, but I wanted to talk about, in the kind of news section, the kind of build-up to it. There was lots going on leading up to the summer, the Game Fest, Summer of Games, and the state of play as well. I wanted to talk about how amusing it was in terms of, because everyone was watching it. We had our own kind of like Discord online kind of watch along, if you like, and everyone was typing away. We had lots of trolling from Capcom, I think is fair to say. We had lots of teasers, and people were starting to go, I don't think anything's coming. And we all had a good giggle about whether the big Resident Evil news, which had been rumoured, was just going to be that the Resident Evil Village is on sale.
I think that annoyed me, honestly.
Did it?
I don't like being deceived. It's just.
Well, you weren't, but it would have. I mean, I think Sean, you were there with me on that one. You were laughing. Okay, if this is it, I would laugh enormously.
I just wanted to invite simple online hysteria if, like, literally it just sort of ended with the chap from Capcom saying, we're just a blink away, and then at the end of the show, it was just literally like a small 15-second snippet, which is like trailer coming at Gamescom or something like that.
In the name, it's literally like that section of the trailer that just is the title reveal is all you got.
Yeah,
like, literally 10 seconds of like that's the blink. Yeah, that would have been quite funny.
But no, I think once you'd seen the Maggie Robertson, once that had come up, I think everybody knew it was the show ender. There's no way they would tease like that and it not deliver.
It's kind of that opposite is true kind of effect, because Capcom notoriously had not turned up to other events, and people were like, I was expecting Resident Evil 9 to turn up, and so when they start doing little things about it, you kind of start going, this is not if you weren't going to show anything, you just wouldn't show anything. Like. Yeah. Why would you put in something that's so small and trivial to say that? I mean, it seemed kind of throwaway.
I think once people had spied the Capcom producers in the audience, I think that pretty much told everybody what was going to happen.
Also, I think I mean, generally speaking, there was a lot of goodwill towards Capcom. They made a big event deal of it, didn't they? The 30th anniversary, and all these snippets. it was a little bit of a kick in the teeth as well, I suppose, for some of the leakers around. We don't generally talk about leaks because so much of them is false, and I think if anything has shown, no one got near to what was happening with this trailer. Whilst there were rumours going around that something's going to happen, that really was about it. The name never materialised beforehand. The new character of Grace never came about either.
So you saying that someone out there is a one-man disinformation campaign? Get out of here! It's a crazy thought.
Who knows? But isn't it? My point wasn't necessarily to slag off leakers. I don't just have any time for them. But wasn't it nice just to be a little bit surprised for once? Wasn't it nice just to watch something? And I remember, just generally, I was watching it, and whilst I thought it was happening, I was like, "Is this Resident Evil?" And it didn't automatically look RE Engine at first, and I was like, "Is this?" I mean, it looks fantastic, and we'll talk about that as well. But I was like, "Is it?" And there's only when the name drop came, I was like, "Oh!" And I mean, I haven't had that feeling for a long time with Resident Evil, and that was nice.
I was watching it with a friend of mine, and she first thought, "Is this Control 2? It looks like it might be Control 2 or something like that." But then the moment we saw Grace and we saw her character design, we're like, okay, that was designed by a Japanese person. Her character design, it's like Japanese version of Americans right there. And we knew that once I heard that surname, I was like, I've heard that somewhere before.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. There, I think the last time we had this was RE7, where there was that genuine shock of surprise. But the difference was here this time, like Spencer's just said, the name drops and things like that. I mean, the real time play out of the trailer and the Discord was absolutely hilarious because people caught the Ashcroft thing really early on, and then there was just like this mad scramble. Is it supposed to be Alyssa now? Is it who's Grace? Is it his sister? Is it and then gradually as the trailer went on, and it's like they're not doing this, surely are they? And like you say, that feeling. Like we've been genuinely surprised because so much of Village was well known by the time it had come out. Not necessarily the clear picture, but certainly aspects of it being very medieval inspired, and there's zombies with armor and there's vampires in it and stuff. But so this was genuinely nice to have that feeling again. That and to still have it on beyond the trailer as well. We still don't really have a clear idea of which direction this game's going to go. And it's just great.
I got an idea where this game's going to go, and I'll get to it when we go into it in deep detail. But it involves Star Wars references, and you ain't going to like the analogies I'm going to use because, not good.
State of Play came out, if everyone couldn't cast their minds back. We had just as exciting news for a good section of the fandom with the announcement of Resident Evil 2 and 3, the originals, coming out onto PlayStation Plus. Now, this is the first time they've been available digitally since PlayStation 3 days, I believe. So it's following in the footsteps of the director's cut, but not quite, because it's locked behind a bit of a paywall, which was certainly disappointing.
I can't help but feel that the HD Seamless project kind of made these games rather redundant. I mean, we could have and should have had these releases years ago. Again, just amazing and wonderful that we get that fan project, that HD remaster of these originals. So it kind of feels a bit redundant and kind of after the event, far too late, really, for me.
They are probably more or less. I was talking about this on the Discord. It's like, these are probably more or less the same game containers as far as they are that were the ones that were released on the PS3. They've just literally been put into the Sony EMU platform, which is I don't fully understand all the nuts and bolts, but it feels like Sony does the legwork for the developers, other than deciding about any trophy support, and then the developers have to provide trophy points and artwork for it. And so it seems Capcom, in their usual infinite wisdom, these will probably not have trophies because all the other Capcom games haven't. And most of the games that they've put forward, with the exception of Dino Crisis so far, have been games that were already available on the PS3, which makes the work probably a little bit easier for testing and so forth. It's kind of a new old thing, which is I think is the reason why, at least in the PAL regions, you had that thing where if you purchase it digitally before, you had it for free already, and that eventually got rolled out worldwide, and I think that will be the same here. I think if you've ever purchased the digital versions when you've had a PS3 or PS4 that was the PS1 classics, this will probably be in your library already as soon as it launches.
Hope so. Well, I say that I've never bought them. So when it became apparent that Director's Cut, if you bought it in the PAL regions, I did quickly then load up PlayStation 3, buy it on the PS3, and then I got it on PS4, PS5. But correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't this the PS3 down yet for the shop?
No, it's not still. It's still.
So we might
just continues to be buggy and problematic. They were going to close it down and then chose not to due to the pressure of people saying no. So they haven't yet done it. I'm sure at some point they're going to announce it. I'm sure every few months it gets smaller and smaller as less stuff gets accessible to, as I know that's the case. But
so that could be something to keep an eye on then when release comes. That if the old Director's Cut trick works, buy it on PS3, then you've got it for free. Then,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's probably going to be cheaper than buying it outright on the if they do put a price on it, because when they eventually put it up for sale independently, it was more expensive than if you just bought the PS3 version, but fractionally. The other thing that's interesting about it that make me curious is that, and because of Dino Crisis is a perfect example of this. So Dino Crisis has obviously a PAL and an NTSC version, so they had to check both of these. So that's obviously a lot of time and effort you have to put into making sure that they work properly on the platform, on the EMU platform they've put out. When the original game came out on the PSN, on the PS3, it came out in Japan for the Japanese versions of Biohazard 2 and 3, and the US got the US versions of 2 and 3. I think the US 2 is the DualShock version. The PAL version just never eventuated, and after a while, through just the general lack of the pressure that was being put on, the people were saying, when's it going to turn up on the PAL store? Because they had to do Resident Evil 2 when it was released on PAL didn't just have our version, it had multiple versions, just like the original Resident Evil, which is they have different versions for all the different languages, and they're not all on the one disc or set of discs as it is for Resident Evil 2. So because of that, I think because it was so much testing and effort to try and get all the PAL versions working, they just ended up putting the US versions only on the PAL store, which was good, because you got access to a PAL, the PAL platform could get access to the full speed, US version. It worked. It was exactly the same as the one that was put out in the US, but you lost some of the PAL support. So if you're a person who doesn't speak English and you wanted it in Italian or French or Spanish or whatever it had been released in, you couldn't play it without. It didn't have those languages. So the thing that may have held this up is if they end up putting the PAL versions in for the 2 and 3, they have to be added, tested, all the different language versions have to be supported. It's a bit of a mess. There's also, I don't think yet, someone may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, if there's been any versions of any of the games that have gone onto that platform currently that are only one region. I think all of them have at least had two regions in them. And they announced Twisted Metal 3 and 4 at the same event, and they were only ever released in the United States. So that's going to be an interesting tell as well. If they come out first and they've only got PAL, so they've only got NTSC support and no PAL version, because there never was a PAL version, then it may turn out that Resident Evil 2 and 3 won't have a PAL support version. It will literally just be the US or US and Japanese versions. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, a long technical ramble, but in the end, it's a very interesting conundrum for people who kind of like that sort of techie background, especially of the old days when you had PAL and NTSC versions that ran completely different. And
well, I'm hoping they're popular. I mean, we've seen this before, haven't we, with a series when Remake HD came onto the platform. It kind of reinvigorated Capcom to release them properly and start and do that again. So hopefully, if RE2 and 3 become popular, we may get that collection volume 1 at some point, which is what everyone's after. And again, keeping with the kind of state of play announcement, we had another the kind of Mortal Kombat collection. How good is that? Just give us that, Capcom. I don't know.
Yeah, those collections that they've done for the Cowabunga collection for Turtles, and obviously this Digital Eclipse doing them. The way that they include multiple versions of the same game is something that a lot of companies should aspire to do. That is exactly how to do it. Wouldn't it be neat, to have a Resident Evil Master Collection, and you've got the PlayStation version of Resident Evil 2, the Dreamcast version to choose from, and the N64 version to choose
That's the
from.
one.
You
That's
know,
the
and
one I
then-
want to
Steam.
play.
Put
you
it
know,
on
and then
Steam.
you just pick your version.
But it would be a conversion, and it would go on all platforms. The problem inherent, as I was explaining on the Discord, and when this whole conversation kind of kicked off, is I think, excuse me, it's less about the fact that Capcom technically couldn't do this. They could definitely do it. They've done it with other collections, like the Street Fighter one. You know, if they outsource it to certain partners and emulate platforms and all that sort of stuff, it's not an impossible task. I think it's more about them being very uncertain about muddying the waters, and this was something that we'll end up talking a little bit, I'm sure, in regards to the RE9 reveal, is how the series is perceived now, mostly wholly in the kind of HD era, and especially the RE Engine era, which means basically everything from Resident Evil 4's original release onwards, well, technically not HD, it's kind of the marking point of where they kind of have like the modern era, what we would still class as the modern era, and the stuff before then gets very squirmy in regards to like how much reference they put into it and how much they support it. And you'll notice that all the things that have come out with regards to classic things, like this thing with the PS3 version, the PS5 and PS4 EMU versions, which I think, as I said, predominantly led by Sony for that. Those releases, the GOG versions, which were obviously done by them. Capcom's very hands-off if they don't have to put any work or effort into it and they don't market it hard. It's a very telling sign to me that they're probably very unlikely to do a collection on this scale. I could be completely wrong. All of a sudden, next year, there's an announcement, 30th anniversary collection. We'll be ecstatic. But if it doesn't happen, I also won't be surprised for that reason, because they haven't really made an active thing to treat anything pre-HD era with any kind of level of the same respect that they once had, because, as I pointed out to someone, and it sounds really bad because they've got counterpoints and they're very true, but reselling a game that sold 4 million to 5 million copies compared to a remake of that same game that sold 14 million copies, a little bit of a different ballpark. The additional question is, you already got a remake that they started with originally on their first point as a reimagining of a title, and they've started to do stuff like the deluxe remasters with Dead Rising. They've done remakes, obviously. Like, it muddies the water if you go back and start releasing collections of old games sometimes. And that's the difference between, say, some of these other ones where there isn't a new title. It's not a direct remake of something. It's a reversion of a game that only existed in its form. Like, so Tomb Raider, obviously they did, aside from Tomb Raider Anniversary, which was kind of a loose remake of Tomb Raider 1, they didn't go and do a remake of Tomb Raider 2, Tomb Raider 3, and onwards. They exist as they did. So a collection of those kind of makes sense to put them into a modern context. But it's a bit of a squirmier thing when you've tried doing remakes of them, and then the mass of what that means from a narrative canon thing is and versions and characters. And I think we're in an era now where we're starting to see, barring a very unintended, well, very intended, but very unexpected, Outbreak reference, most of what's in RE9 and what's in these other things is very looking forward. And I'll be very surprised, pleasantly, don't get me wrong, if they go down that path of putting a collection together, even though it seems so obvious to me, like it does to you guys, that of what you need to put into it and how to do it, because we've seen it plenty of times.
Final bit of news, we go back to Romby as well.
For fuck's sake.
I know. Well, to talk about your little side project with regards to your your podcast. Did you opening the floor up for you to have a little chat about?
Oh God! Now I need to go another ramble. Shit. Yeah, if there's anyone still awake. So a few months ago, actually going back a couple of years ago, Alex and Neil and I had a conversation about the idea that he was thinking about doing a follow-up to his book. So if you remember, he released a book, Itchy Tasty, which covered the history of the Resident Evil franchise from its inception through to Resident Evil, kind of just after Resident Evil 4. And he had originally written kind of a little bit beyond that, and then when he was working on the editors, they kind of put a pin, decided to need to put a pin kind of somewhere in it, and it seemed like a good point on a high after Resident Evil 4. And he kind of ummed and ahed about whether or not he was ever going to do a sequel book, and for a while he wasn't going to, but he was kind of starting to digest what that book would look like. And we ended up having this conversation about the idea of putting together a podcast which allowed us to discuss the topics and bring on guests and so forth to kind of like pull out information and kind of things to think about when he was going to go back to a second book. And it's all very low. This is I make it sound very grand, but it's all very lo-fi. We haven't put much effort. I haven't promoted it like greatly because it's just there as a thing. Like it'll be there. It's kind of timeless in the sense we're looking back at games that have already released. We're not looking at new stuff, so it's really a thing of itself. So you can listen to it at any point. If you listen to it 3 years down the track, it's still going to be just as relevant. And yeah, so it's a limited series, looking at about 12 episodes. Leading up to the 30th anniversary. So far, Alex and I have covered a few topics like Umbrella and Darkside Chronicles and Resident Evil 5. We haven't had any guests on for the first couple because we didn't have anything pre-organized, but there are episodes that I've started to record. We've got some upcoming guests, and honestly, I wish we'd scheduled them in for all of them because it makes the dynamic so much more interesting. There's so many more thoughts going around and everything. So, if you're interested in like the history of development, I mean, we talk about the narratives and all the controversies and non-controversies and all that stuff that surrounds them. Or if you've read Alex's book, you'll probably really enjoy it because it's very much the same sort of thing. You can find it on Spotify. It's called Complete Global Saturation, and yeah, please enjoy it. Share it with people, and if you have any questions that you want us to talk about any of the topics we have already covered, we'll probably come back to them at some point. But yeah, it's on Spotify, Apple, all that sort of stuff. Well, that was one of the thoughts I had for an episode. So
okay,
there we go. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, do check. Everyone should check that out. It's a nice side piece from our Romby here. That does finish all the news. Just a quick shout out for our patrons, new patron who have joined us. So big thank you to Obi Wannabe, Fluffy Nuffy, and Trench. Some awesome quality names there. So thank you all for
great name that is.
They are good, aren't they? For joining. If anyone's interested, you can head over to patreon.com/Resident Evil Podcast, or you can click on the community link on the website. That does finish the overall news section. We now turn our attention as we once again take a trip back to Raccoon City, so it seems, with Resident Evil Requiem.
We found another body. One that exhibits the same pathology as the others we've been investigating. Now I need a good technical analyst on this.
Okay.
I need your eyes on the crime scene. The Renwood Hotel. I know that's where your mother was murdered. Alyssa died 8 years ago. Perhaps it's time for you to face the past. Grace.
What is this? Hey!
Stay close. They're coming.
I know now that you're the one that I've been searching for. The special one. The chosen one. Miss Ashcroft.
Investigating all these strange deaths, huh?
We need to keep our voices down.
Have you seen the same shit I've seen?
Please know that you are my hope.
Everyone's gone.
Stay away from that!
Wow! That's my introduction. I think I as I said earlier, I didn't even think it was Resident Evil when it started. It was just one of those. Oh, okay, we're going for it. So what I want to do is do some initial thoughts from everyone, and then we're going to kind of go through some of the characters, story beats, what we think is going to happen. What clues can we actually get from what we've seen? Hopes, fears. The usual, what we do for our reveal podcast. But of course, we haven't actually had a reveal podcast for quite some time. So bear
A
with us.
few fears, probably, I'd imagine, for sure.
I'm sure, yeah, and that's what we want to kind of like, see where we go, because these podcasts are always quite interesting when you go back to them afterwards, after the game comes out. What kind of what do we get right, what do we get wrong? It's very hard from this trailer, but we'll see what we do. So, perhaps some overall thoughts, some preliminary thoughts. Batman, let's start with you. What was your thought process when you saw this for the first time?
I was very intrigued. I mean, due to work circumstances, I never got to watch the trailer till a good sort of 4 or 5 hours after it dropped. So I knew what I was looking at in that regards, but similar to yourself, the first minute I saw, I was like, this doesn't feel like Resident Evil at all. It was, I was aware of the leaks and speculations that were floating around on Twitter and whatnot, and therefore being presented with this daughter of a legacy character in an FBI office was something, I was not expecting at all. For a 3.5 minute trailer, they've still keeping the cards very close to the chest. They've not really revealed what the enemies are, what the gameplay style's going to be, but it's very intriguing. Going back to Raccoon City, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, it's nice to see it again. There seems to be a hell of a lot of the city still standing, considering the blast we saw in the original RE3. And of course, the remake. In the original RE3, you actually see the police station get completely obliterated. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I hope there's a proper story reason for going back there after nearly 30 years, rather than just pandering to nostalgia. But I'm very intrigued by Grace. From what little we've seen of her, she seems to be a really interesting character. We've got the token sort of old man bad guy that I'm sure there's already thousands of videos out there saying it's somehow Spencer, even though it's not going to be. Yeah, very intrigued. I'm very keen to see what Capcom reveal next.
You kind of reminded me of what I was going to say when you said the last part, but sorry, what was covered on that?
Well, we've got our Spencer back. So, John, what was your kind of preliminary thoughts on the trailer? What did you think?
I agree with John on this, actually. I think initially I was like, I love Grace, love her design. I think having her related to a legacy character from a spin-off game, Alyssa, was awesome. That's a hell of a pull, and I think that's great. It tanked a bit when I saw Raccoon City, because it was like I had the same feeling I got when I saw the trailer for The Rise of Skywalker, when you saw the ruins of the Death Star. And what it made me think of is, like, you look at Village, and we go by mainline titles here. You look at Village, much like The Last Jedi, even though I like The Last Jedi, did a lot of stuff that was very removed from what people would call traditional, like, Star Wars kind of stuff, like interpretations of the Force, all that kind of stuff. And I think what happened was fans were like, kind of mixes. Oh, this is far removed from what I'm used to. Capcom looked at that and were like, oh man, we need to bring up the nostalgia bait. Here we go, the RPD. Here's the RPD. My main concern with the game is, I've got two concerns. Number one, I hope that Grace will be the central main character. I don't want her to be like in the beginning and then suddenly Leon or Claire turn up and then just look at the camera and go, hey guys, remember the RPD? Remember RE2? Do you remember the police station? Do you remember all that? And they do fucking like Soyjack meme faces, like pointing at the police station, like, hey, remember all this? I would hate that for that to happen. And the second thing is, which I'm going to close on, is the old man in the chair. There's theories going around, like Batman said, that it's like going to be Spencer. I secretly hope, I hope they do this because it would be so silly if they introduce it as Spencer and then don't explain it, right? They just have like Leon or Claire just go, somehow Spencer returned. And they don't explain it. I think that would be fucking hilarious, and I hope they do it, because it'd be so dumb. Like Grace, love her. I love the original story. Hotel, murders, awesome, love it. Raccoon City, nostalgia bait for content creators. That's all that shit is. Don't care for it. No reason to go back there. It's silly. Those are my thoughts on it.
We'll see. I think you make a good point. I think we do, if we're going to go back to Raccoon City, I think there needs to be a legit reason. There needs to be something interesting to do that. So we wait with bated breath on that one. From my point of view, I found it as I said, I agree with John as well on Batman there. It was like, I wasn't sure this was Resident Evil, and it kind of got into it. It's good to see the FBI. I'm intrigued to know why they're doing this. I just assumed the FBI investigate aliens, but there we go.
I'm more interested in the FBI aspect with Grace than I am with Rugged Raccoon City. Because
there's certainly, as I said, there's certainly two aspects of the trailer which I found quite interesting. George Trevor, what about you? Has this sparked interest for you? The way it looks, perhaps more of a horror element. It certainly looks quite scary, and I know you're obviously a big Silent Hill fan as well. I thought it invoked a little bit of Silent Hill Homecoming with her kind of trapped to a kind of medical chair, which is the beginning of Homecoming. Did you pick up on that?
Wow, the fact that you mentioned Homecoming, because part of this trailer actually did remind me of Homecoming. It reminded me of the part in Silent Hill Homecoming when Pyramid Head inexplicably turns up and almost turns to the camera like a Happy Days moment, like the Fonz that has to pause before he delivers his opening dialogue, and the audience, cheer as he walks onto the stage, and Pyramid Head almost looks at the camera like, with his thumbs up, hey, it's me again. I just found that the clickbait name drop from Outbreak isn't going to get me excited. I think what will get me excited is Alyssa Ashcroft in a HD remaster of Outbreak. I want to love this game. Please don't get me wrong, but nothing about that trailer, I found it interested me. I found it so uninspiring, generic. The exposition, your mother died here 8 years ago. I mean, if you from the starting point that I shouldn't take this too seriously, at what point do you go to a level where things are of such low writing standard that they have to be held accountable? Because I hold them accountable for that appalling writing that I had to suffer for Resident Evil Village with the Mother Miranda walking into the cave, and that's how she discovered her, that signature virus.
That was probably the opening FMV, I would say. It's probably the opening. What we saw was the opening cutscene leading up to what I'd imagine is going to be like the tutorial level.
Why would you send this person back to the point where I just found it so ridiculous. Look, Alan Wake had a fucking musical in it, yet still managed to have the whole investigation side of things very grounded and very realistic. Just at some point I want to be engaged in the narrative, and it just becomes for me so preposterous. It's almost like a Carry On movie. It's just so tropey. I found it quite astonishing that it hadn't been called out more for just how almost kind of just clickbaiting and a cheap gimmick that the Ashcroft drop was. But I want to be proved wrong, and when I saw the fact that we were going back to Raccoon City again, it just felt so uninspiring. That this just felt so old and tired. But it's an initial trailer, and there's so much more that we could discover, and I could be wrong.
Romby, what about you? What was your preliminary thoughts?
I don't know how to follow that up, man. I've already rambled enough, so I don't need to say too much. At the start, I'm like looking at this going, is this RE engine? It kind of has that look, I was like, going back to the whole fake out thing, and then settling into actually what was going on. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. It's definitely got a different tone already. If it is, like, I wasn't expecting a connection to a character that we've gotten references in Remake of 3 and 7, sorry, and but a lot of these things that were in 7 were just like window dressing. Like the HCF thing is not proven. It was just like, let's throw a reference to try and tie this game back to a bunch of old stuff, and I thought that was what the newspaper article for her was in that. So yeah, I don't know who came to that conclusion. I thought that was an interesting idea. I'm not sure if I agree with GT that it's so clickbaity, because I think it's a pretty deep cut for some people. Like, I think there's a lot of people who never, having seen the reactions online, didn't know who that character is, or didn't realize there was a really established link with that character. So I kind of don't think that was done with that intent, but I'm sure there's some people who will be surprised by it. I'm just as trepidatious about the Raccoon City thing. I think it kind of looks cool, but like, who knows where that's going to lead? Is it, as John said correctly before, is it got a good reason for being there? I don't know the answer to that question. And it's interesting that it's the remake RPD, right? Remake Raccoon City, clearly, because some of the angles, some of the shots.
We'll come to that, don't you worry.
It makes it another intriguing element too. So
Can I just quickly correct myself? Sorry, because Robbie's right. I didn't think in terms of clickbait. Capcom are looking for sort of quick views. More just in terms of the narrative and the scene. Of what merit, other than the fact that her surname's Ashcroft. What does this add to the narrative merit-wise, other than that just little connection? And I just kind of felt I want to see more. I want to see you doing more with the series, and I just want to see more ambition and something different and something new.
But that to me is not something you would answer in a first trailer, GT. Like that's something that, like, if you establish a character like Alyssa, who you go, well, she was a survivor of Raccoon City's events, went on to have a career as continuing her journalism career, and then was investigating something that got her killed. That's the narrative hook. Like, that's the point of, like, you get that connection. Right now, it hasn't been confirmed that she's a survivor of Raccoon, and it'll either end up being a giant, like, well, I wouldn't say retcon, because it'll just start to invalidate all of Outbreak if all of a sudden they don't make her the same character. So that's one risk already. And then you have this other element of, like, what is the things that have happened between the time of the Raccoon City's destruction up until when she was killed? And what connection does this have to the mystery of Raccoon City? I think much like everything, like, the title can be read into, because it's a requiem for the dead and a requiem for the destruction of Raccoon City, but it also has to do with individuals and all this sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot more questions than answers, but that's a good trailer trick. That's what's supposed to draw you in. It's not supposed to put you off thinking that it's going to be the worst situation. Where I think that comes from for you, GT, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, comes from the experience of what you said earlier about the things that you didn't like about Village, that you didn't like about the characterization in the past, is probably the bigger issue, right? Like, it's more to do with how you perceive Capcom's ability to derive this plot using this character. Would that be right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And let's not forget, Village had a nasty trailer bait with evil Chris. Which doesn't bode well. But I agree with you there, Rob, entirely. I think the hook there is the murder mystery, and I like the fact that you've got a scenario whereby you've got someone investigating grisly murders of someone. I mean, that's very RE1, and someone's then basically told to go and investigate. And by the way, you're going back to where your mother was murdered.
Sorry, I just want an antagonist in these games that has a vision for a virus that is immersive and engaging, because it's not too fantastical and it comes about in a way that is believable and grounded, whatever the peculiarities of what that virus, the mutations that virus causes, that can be as fantastical as you like. But I haven't had a problem with that in the classic era. You look at some of the mutations that we've had, but just in terms of what the antagonist is doing with that, how it came about, how that antagonist came about, that virus, whatever, whether it was produced or whether it was a natural or it was found, however they came about it, and their vision for it, and their whole maniacal plan. That was my problem with Village. And
yeah, it's fair enough, and we'll see where it goes.
On the topic, I want to say real quick. You talked about trailer bait and things like that. I would not be as opposed to seeing going to Raccoon City if they did it like MGS4. If you remember the trailers for Metal Gear Solid 4, they never showed Shadow Moses. They never showed it. It was a complete surprise to go there in Act 4, whatever it was. And I wish that they had done that same thing, where you just focus on the Grey stuff, the FBI stuff, and then, oh wow, we're going to... you only find out when the game's released that you're going to this... you the return to Shadow Moses, right? Or Raccoon City. That would have been a hell of a fucking surprise. And the second thing I want to say real quick is what GT was saying about antagonists with viruses. Kind of wonder if that nuke that was dropped on Raccoon City probably fucked a lot more things up and made what was there didn't kill what was there, but mutated it further.
Well, that's already alluded to in the Outbreak epilogue. After the government seal it off, they send people in and they basically hint that something has survived down there, but obviously it was never elaborated on after that. So maybe that's something
Which leaves
Capcom
that-
looked at.
Yeah.
I want to go back to. I want to finish off with Sean's initial view, because Sean was heartbroken, as I alluded to in the introduction, and I thought he should definitely have the final say in terms of the introductory thoughts. How are you coping, my friend?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we covered Outbreak extensively last year with multiple episodes. So anyone who listens regularly knows, my main, if you will, for Outbreak's Alyssa. And in the same trailer, they bring her back. They announce she's dead. So awesome! Thank you ever so much. I mean, obviously, there's going to be more to it. They've already, you can already see in the trailer. There's probably going to be, an extensive playable section or prologue or something that features her in it, and I'm sure there's probably going to be even more to it than that, because it's Resident Evil, and no one's ever really gone in Resident Evil for whatever reason or another. I think it looks great. I don't know whether it's just sheer relief that it's not a remake again. I sit here and I beg and I plead. All I want is new stories all the time, and I feel like I'm getting one. I think the hook with Grace is really good. Obviously, the Ashcroft connection is automatically going to put me on side with it. So I'm really intrigued with that. I kind of like the fact that the game is almost at this point being sold as this sort of procedural mystery. Like it feels like, certainly Grace's role in the game is you're going to, go to a place and you're going to investigate. And if they really push that angle, hard for her, then, I don't know whether people watched the Summer Games Fest beyond the trailer itself, but Jeff actually did say the game is not just horror. It's got I can't remember how he described it, but set piece action and things like that coming. So this is clearly going to be reference to a secondary protagonist, which everyone has already assumed is going to be Leon. And like Spencer said earlier, I don't want him to come along and derail the game for what feels like a very interesting new spin on the Resident Evil formula. I really hope that's not just like the opening third, and then when Leon turns up, it just becomes Resident Evil 4 all over again. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they strike that balance. But in terms of the hook, they've got me, because I think Grace is really interesting. Could have done with her looking slightly more aesthetically different to than Rose with just a different haircut, but that's by the by. Because I even saw in the chat as the trailer was unfolding, people were like, "Is this Rose?" The biggest thing for me, and we'll really deep dive into this as we go through the episode, is I really am not keen on them retroactively changing the damage to Raccoon City. Ironically, every time we go near the Outbreak thing, something to do with the destruction of Raccoon City is put into question, whether it's one missile, multiple missiles. Now we've got very clear differential damage that's done to it. In one game it looks to be completely, utterly wiped out, and it's literally just like rubble and ash. And now there's even buildings stood with the glass panes still existing within them. If you were underground during that blast, you're going to be alive. If you're in the subways and things like that, further enough away from the blast, you're going to be living through that. So it's not quite a sterilizing operation as the game's led you to believe. But in terms of going back to it, and I think the Shadow Moses one, I thought this myself, that was handled really well in MGS4. So I'm really intrigued to see how they do this with Requiem. Because I do think, if we're going into 2026, it's the 30th anniversary of the series, the idea of going back to the foundations of where it's the literal foundations of where this series started is quite genius. I'm quite sold by it. I'm not big on nostalgia. It doesn't all. I like nostalgia when it's done well, and I feel this is just enough new with a foot to the past. And so they've got me. They've got my hook for this. They've got a hook into me for this one. I'm intrigued, and that's all you ever ask for from a new Resident Evil, I think.
That's it. I've had it. This time they've gone too far.
Do you you think? Let's stick with the nostalgia thing. Do you think, though, and I know Mr. Spencer raised it, enough time has passed, but I'm talking specifically about the fact that because this does look to be the remake RPD, is there enough time that's passed to go, oh my god, I'm back here again? Because it's so different from the original RPD. It's kind of like, oh, it's only came out 2019, and it's like,
yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit different, isn't it? Because
I don't think that's like. I'm so sorry to interject, but I'm just thinking now. See, when you mention like the remake kind of building and things like that, it's very recent. But I don't think even that's relevant or pertinent because Raccoon City itself as a name is mentioned almost every fucking game. That you can't get away from it. It's not a matter of, oh, it's the remake version or whatever. It's that Raccoon City, oh, the thing they mentioned, that other game and this game and that game. Like we've already saturated with it to where it doesn't have the impact as it should, like Shadow Moses did.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what would have been really special, and this is that I'll just finish my my initial thoughts as well with this bit, was I think if they'd shown like the ruined hall of the RPD and it was very clearly the OG RPD, I'd probably fallen off my chair.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like if it'd been the OG main hall without like the double stairway in it, I'd have gone, oh my god, look, they're actually doing it. And this is the problem. Ultimately, my final point, my initial impressions is I'm worried because previously the remake timeline has kind of existed on its own, and all the mainline games were its own thing, if you like, and you could sort of put aside the remakes as their own separate continuity, whereas now we've got the first mainline title, the first numbered title, Resident Evil 9, that's throwing back very directly to the remake stuff.
Can I say real quick, Sean? Sorry to interrupt you, but I have to get this out. I'm so sorry. But when you said if they'd pan down, it was like the OG entrance hall, right? The OG that you said, you'd be like really happy. Like, oh, it's the OG main hall. And then the camera pans down and it goes to the floor and it's got the fucking 1969 on the fucking Stars logo out there.
Yeah.
Ruins it.
I'm falling off a chair again as I turn back on it. Absolutely.
I was going to say, I think this is the Dr. Bard situation that I think we've spoken about before in many podcasts.
This is the entire thing of your video, isn't it?
When's Dr. Bard turning up in RE9? Not figuratively, but yeah.
So what do we do?
I don't know.
If you've had a very direct stance that the remakes exist in their own thing, and now we've got the numbered sequel that Requiem, is it going to cap off a lot of storylines and things like that? But then it's got this kind of weird blend. It's like where do we sit? They've brought back Alyssa Ashcroft. What an amazing Outbreak reference! But it feels like Operation Javier all over again. Because when Javier was released, when it was mentioned in that first trailer, everybody sort of triumphantly punched the air and was like, "Oh my god, what a great reference! They've not forgotten about this." But then when you play through 4 Remake, Javier's a very different thing, and I almost feel like we're going to get this with Alyssa. Like, yeah, Alyssa's back; it's really awesome. But through the events that you play through Requiem, you go, "Well, she's not really the same Alyssa anymore, is she?" And that's kind of my worry.
I think, as much as we don't want to, you're just going to have to try and ignore that, because we've learned in recent years that Capcom don't really care too much about canon and continuity and that sort of thing. And the visual aspect of the RPD being the remake version doesn't bother me, because that's a continuity thing. It's got absolutely nothing to do with canon. And to be honest, if I was in charge of developing this game, I probably would have gone with the remake design simply because that's what 90% of my audience would be familiar with. Compared to 20% who've played the originals. A lot of people who heavily invested in RE9 probably weren't even born when the original 2 and 3 came out. But the interesting thing for me is when RE2 and RE3 came out 5 and 6 years ago, Resident Evil 9 was in development, but it was clearly a different iteration then, because RE3 remake especially made it clear in the files that the events of Outbreak didn't happen. Okay, sure, the characters, the locations, there was plenty of references in there, but if you marry up the files, and I've gone through this in other podcasts, the events of Outbreak simply don't happen. So you've got this interesting blend with RE9 in that it's using the aesthetics of the remakes, but it's following on story points and using characters that are very much based on the OG universe, if that makes sense. So, as much as we've got these, visual headaches, you've just got to try and ignore them.
It's not the first time they've done it as well. There was a version of Wesker's report that used Operation Raccoon City stuff, didn't it?
Yeah, but that's simply because Operation Raccoon City had newer visuals that looked better.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. There's no story reason behind it.
No, but I'm just saying, you could watch that and still ignore what you're kind of seeing, but just pick up on the story beats remain true in Wesker's report, not necessarily what you're seeing. So yes, your point is correct. You could go, well, if you travel to the RPD, you still travel to the RPD. It's, for me, it's troubling. I can't lie. I'm very excited about the game. I think it looks good. I'm hoping for a decent reason, compelling reason why we go to Raccoon City.
I'm absolutely with you. And obviously, from a personal point of view, I wish it was the original police station as well. But if it was, a majority of people will be like, well, why does it look completely different to Remake 2? And that's simply because it's a lot fresher in people's minds. And the original game is so old now. It's just it's as simple as that, I think.
It's the same argument I was making before about releasing the old games. Like, when your audience is more attuned to the new version and it's sold so much more than the old one, you expect that the reference point is going to be the newer one because that will be the one that most people know. It's the same thought, exactly.
I'm still hesitant about how much Raccoon City is going to be in it, because it reminds me, like, a lot of I said this in the Discord earlier, but a lot of the marketing around Village was heavily emphasised on that umbrella logo, and that got everyone speculating about so much stuff, and obviously it turned out to be completely inconsequential in the final product.
Yeah, it had minor. That was where I was thinking when John was talking before about the Shadow Moses thing. I'm like, I totally agree exactly with what he's saying in regards to, like, hiding that would be a good point. But if, like, 95% of the game takes place in the city, then you can't really hide that fact, because it doesn't matter what marketing you're going to do. You're going to have to kind of show something at some point, which makes it a lot harder. So if it's mostly all in Raccoon City and it's got an entire reason, then it seems much more justified. But if it ends up being just window dressing that could have been somewhere else, the plot doesn't really, like, they connect it somehow to the events that happened previously, but you kind of go, that if you hadn't done that and just said it somewhere else, it would have been the same thing, Then it kind of becomes that kind of thing, ironically, that GT was talking about before, it's kind of clickbaity kind of style, where you kind of go, you just name drop this and you kind of said this here just for no reason other than you did.
See, that's what I worry about, right? Is I think Sean mentioned this, where my fear is, what I ideally want the game to be is like 85% of the game to be about Grace, where she's in like either this hotel or other places, very sort of paranormal, investigative kind of mystery kind of thing, murder mystery with horror in it, of course, and things like that. That would be great. That's what I want to see. My worry that I have is that it'll be a third of that, the game will be, and it'll be this really cool, like, new character, new stories, something new and fresh and different. And then a third of the way through, Leon turns up, is like, 1998, I'll never forget it. RE2, the RPD. You remember the RPD? I remember the RPD. I was when I met Ada, and he just rattles off all the fucking locations and all this stuff, and looks at the fucking camera, and breaks the fourth wall, and it's just, that's what I don't want. I don't want just nostalgia wanking.
And I think that's a genuine concern. Yeah, absolutely.
If I had to guess, I would say the first half will be your survival horror experience in this hotel with Grace, and then something will happen. She'll have to retrieve something for that old man in Raccoon City, and the FBI will be like, I've got the perfect man to go with you. And that's where Leon will come in, I think.
Okay. From a kind of lore point of view then, FBI, they're not really in the series much, apart from Ada kind of posing as an FBI agent in Remake 2. I'm intrigued to know what they're doing. I mean, they're investigating a murder, like dead bodies and things like that. He mentions what's his name, Dempsey. He mentions the pathogens, which suggests a degree of scientific involvement, and why perhaps the BSAA aren't involved, or any other groups that we know.
Well, the BSAA probably got written off, wrapped up off screen like Kang the Conqueror. It's like, don't worry about it.
Or
That's all
Umbrella
gone
the
now.
first time round.
Or Umbrella the first time. Like Rose, for example. They've not talked about Rose at all. Like, Rose at this point is like Gaia from Secret Invasion of Resident Evil. This like crazy overpowered character. We just forget about it. Don't worry about it. Just forget about Rose. Forget about the BSAA. Just focus on this now. Like,
I'll give Capcom full marks if they introduce Agent Jack Hamilton from the RE2 file.
The thing with it is also is that but the narrative is kind of interesting in that sense of like time and place. We don't know exactly when it's set. Like, it's 8 years since Alyssa's death, so the latest file and the one in 7 was in 2016. So does that set this about like nowish? Like, is it set in 2025? Like, we don't know. Like, could be any time. And how long's it been since the Raccoon City incident? Has it been 20, 30 years?
When was the ending of that Village DLC set? Because wasn't that like a time skip?
It was a huge time jump. Yeah, it's a massive time jump because she's like actually 18. Yeah, 2037. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we say RE9 set in the present day, Rose will be starting at school now, and her powers will begin to manifest, and everyone will be bullying her, thinking she's so weird. There is a couple of files in Shadows of Rose that allude to that.
Well, I for one excited. FBI, we could get Naomi McClane, and then everyone will be happy. I mean, if that happens, we're all good. We're all good. And
get Fox Mulder.
So let's talk about some of the characters then that we have seen. We'll come back to Grace because we've spoken a little bit about her, but we've got I suppose, the head. I don't know if he's head of the FBI. I'm not. He just seems to be the captain. But
he's the
Dempsey.
Skinner. He's like the Skinner from X-Men.
Right.
Like, he's not the head, but he's sort of like your boss.
It's Nathan Dempsey, I think his name is. Dempsey spelt weird, by the way, but that's his name, at least according to the office he's in. Again, do you think he's going to be potentially playing a Hunnigan type role? Do you think we're going to see him again, or is just going to be there just as a kind of narrative? Here you go, off you go.
He's either going to be the main villain, or he's just going to be in the intro, I would say.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's just going to start off as a typical murder investigation, and then
he could be like
some sort of biohazard quality is going to come into it, and then they might liaise with the DSO or something, which is where Leon will come in.
He could be like Daniel in Parasite Eve, like your partner, but I don't know.
No, because he's a desk man. He's a head of department, so he's not going to leave that desk. The interesting thing that I think that we probably should have picked up, actually, now thinking about it earlier when we were talking about she's dealing with a case that has to do with bodies.
Yep.
That she's already dealing with, and then she was dealing with some of the case report that she brings in, and then it's unclear if those two things are connected. And then it seems like this other body that's talked about is connected, but it doesn't seem like it's inferred that it's connected to the case with her mum, and it's like the direct correlations are not very clear, if you know what I mean. Like, so what was she looking at? What is the connection? That's all just left as part of that mystery. And I think it's going to be, my question is, I don't think it's going to be as exciting. It's going to be really underwhelming compared to what we think it probably will be. I know that sounds really bad, but I think it's just going to be like, if you're going to tie it to Raccoon City, it's going to be the same thing as John alluded to, that maybe they're picking up a thread of thought that they had from Outbreak File 2, at the end with, there's something still in the Grand Raccoon. It didn't quite kill everything, kind of thing. And if that's just what the mystery is, and she was looking into what was trying to be covered up, then yeah, okay, cool. But
there must be similar cases though, because she's investigating dead bodies. You see her typing, and you see some of the
four. There was on the fourth or whatever it was, and now there's a fifth one that gets into in the meeting. And
he says we found another body. Now, does that mean that that's related to what she's already doing? Because then inevitably that would be a report. It's the same report, but again, that means she knows what they're looking into as well. Has she got a good, wide spectrum of what the FBI are currently investigating? You're right; it's perhaps a little bit unclear. And then you drop what you're doing. He sounds a bit arsehole-ish. It's like, you're going to investigate this. You're going back to where your mum was killed, so you can face your demons. It's okay.
That's maybe
put
why
another agent on it. She's the specialist. Yeah.
But he could also be like a sort of father figure thing and trying to help her get closure about what happened to her mum.
It does seem a little bit like that,
Maybe
yeah, like
why
the
she's
tough love
put on
kind of
there,
thing.
oh, your mother was a survivor of Raccoon City, and somehow that means her daughter will be good at it too. So it's like genetic, I guess.
It doesn't sound like they know there's a biohazard incident or anything. It's just more of a case of something's.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's going to be anything biohazard related to begin with, which is why a standard FBI agent is looking into it rather than anyone from the BSAA or whoever.
There it is.
All those people.
Thus, Raccoon City vanished from the map.
As the trailer goes on, we start to see there could be some cult-like characters. We don't know the man near the gramophone, and the idea that Grace is a chosen one, or at least he thinks Grace is a chosen one. That's intriguing as well.
The thing is, there's so much misdirection in trailers these days that that could be part of the Alyssa prologue, if it indeed exists. And they could be talking about Alyssa.
Yep.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
She's a carrier of daylight potentially, and that might have obviously there's a vaccine for the T virus now and things like that, so daylight's kind of been rendered moot. But because it was such an early experimental treatment that the Outbreak survivors received, it could have twisted, evolved, and changed. Something has survived.
Holy shit! Greg Muller is the key to all this.
Yeah.
Yes, his moment's coming. Oh, don't forget, daylight was randomly brought back in Mahara's eye, wasn't it? So it's not completely off.
And
off piece.
could they do could they pull a Last of Us kind of thing? Because obviously in the Last of Us, the reason why Ellie is immune is because her mother was bitten whilst carrying Ellie. What's to say Alyssa wasn't pregnant during her administration of daylight?
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
Yeah, how old? Yeah,
that's what leaves her to be a potential chosen one.
How old does Grace look though? Right in that.
Yeah. So what age
are
we thinking?
I don't know. Have they actually even because Alyssa has died 8 years prior to the trailer, hasn't she?
Yeah.
So
I'm guessing mid to latish 20s, but then Capcom have an uncanny ability to give people way too much experience at an even younger age, and then they'll be like, "Oh, she's 22."
Let's see, right? So I assume this game will take place in 2026, right? Because usually when a game will happen in the year it's released. Like Resident Evil, OG. Well, no, that was 1998. Fuck. Ori 7 came out in 2017, and I think that was 8. Yeah. So they took place in the same year. So this was released in 2026. Let's assume Grace looks about 26, 28. So you take away those years, 1998. She could have been pregnant at the time. We don't know.
Possible.
It's a good theory because I would suggest the old man, whoever he is, needs someone to go into Raccoon City for a reason. And if the remnants of the T virus have mutated or whatever, and regular vaccines are ineffective, maybe that's why he thinks Grace is special.
Here's a plot twist: the old man's Al Lester.
Oh
wow!
Yeah.
No, I'm trying.
Well, sure.
Dorothy made me strong again.
So this is up there with the bringing back Ark era of randomness.
Well, this is the thing, people. I saw people on socials today because why I don't know why we do this to ourselves, but sometimes you explore socials just to see how things have gone down. And there's some people seriously lamenting the fact, I even saw a post today that said something like, Capcom just randomly forgets Jill, Leon, and all this. God, you've had enough games in the last few years with these characters in it. Can't you appreciate the fact that bringing Alyssa back, that's huge. That opens the doorway of so many more possibilities now.
Can you imagine if they did what you said, right? Then he bring that Al Lester, right? And there's the whole speech. He goes, "It's me, Al Lester," like big grandiose, like big reveal moment, and all the all the Zoomers are like, "Who the fuck's that?"
You exposed my hospital in 1998.
You investigated me in 1993.
Yeah, or whatever it was. Yeah.
Whatever it was. What the fuck?
I think given the connections to the early games, I think that means we can rule out the mold coming back. I think we'll be going back to a virus here. I think we might still get the connections and potentially Blue Umbrella if it's Raccoon City related, but I don't think the mold is going to come back.
But so by that association, is the man in the chair a dying Brandon Bailey then?
Ooh, I like that.
Possibly.
I've had this thought that I think if this story is kind of wrapping up perhaps other story, who knows?
Connections.
Yeah, I do. And we're going back to Raccoon City. I do think we're going to need something from the bad guy point of view to make it like, oh, that's him or that's her. If Leon's in it, I think Ada's going to be in it. And if we're gonna do, as I go back to Raccoon City, I don't like the idea of Spencer coming back.
Somehow he returned.
Yeah, I don't like it, but I do think we need something to make it memorable. We've had so many one-hit wonders with regards to villains, and it's been such a problem since Resident Evil 5. Imagine, just for one moment, old Simmons was still alive.
The KFC guy.
Yeah, imagine if Ethel Simmons coming back or something like that. I mean, there'll be a bit of gravitas towards it, a bit more, oh my god, something to... And he was directly involved in Raccoon City.
How would you feel, Nick, if the man in the chair is Wesker, resurrected via the mutant Megamycete, and then he gets killed by a door?
Yeah, shit. Just a door. Yeah, I'd laugh all day long. But I mean, that's the thing. I don't think Wesker.
His blood lives on. His blood lives on. Sorry.
Does anyone else think they if the story is kind of a finalization of something, and it looks to be quite a big story going back to Raccoon City? Do you think we need not necessarily a kind of returning villain, but someone to go, oh yeah, they've kind of built up Brandon Bailey, but how many people really read the Baker Report? How many of these 14 million people that bought whatever RE2 know what the fuck Brandon Bailey is?
Well, what Capcom are gonna do is they're gonna do what Blizzard did, right? Where they had Warlords of Draenor come out in 2014, 2015, and subscription numbers tanked, right? It was doing really bad. And then Legion was announced, and it literally was, in case of subscription loss, break glass, here's Illidan Stormrage, very iconic character that everyone loves from Burning Crusade. Let's bring him back. Oh, here's Illidan, he's back somehow, whatever. They're going to do the same with Wesker. Wesker is the Illidan of Resident Evil. He is the iconic face. And here he's back.
But if they're going to do that, they're not going to do it now because they're riding a relatively high number of successful titles in a row, so they haven't reached that point to break glass yet.
And you don't need to bring Wesker back because you've already brought him back in the remakes. So he's going to appear in Code Veronica and 5.
Yeah.
Whatever they do. I think
0 if they do 0. Yeah.
I think part of the problem. I think you're right, Nick. I think Capcom have looked at this and say, right, we need to conclude things, but we have got this villain problem. And I think that's part of the reason we're going back to Raccoon City is to fill in that void. Because we don't really have a proper antagonist that can finish the story off, because they're going to have to introduce a new character that no one's going to resonate with.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a new character, but yeah.
What if they obviously dig deep into the very foundations of Raccoon and find Birkin still alive as a kind of, ultimately evolved G whatever the hell it is. That landmass is as big as like the underground of the city. It's become like this entity. It's not even just a thing anymore. It's like this great hive mind thing of mutation and disgust.
It sounds to me like someone has played Horizon Forbidden West and is thinking of Ted Faro right now, because that's kind of what we want to be of.
But I do imagine that they're going to find something very serious relating, in the ruins. And I would not be at all surprised if they allude to something like, the G virus has managed to keep him hibernating and evolving all this time, and and then Sherry can come back for the final game.
Oh, I knew it was leading somewhere.
Going back to what you were saying about the established villain as opposed to unfinished, it doesn't. You kind of treating it as a one or the other, but it can be both as true in that you just bring back something like the Alyssa thing that doesn't have any resonance to people who don't know what it is, but you establish it within the game, and then the people that do know are all like, "Oh my god!" It's the Leo DiCaprio meme of like, "I recognize that" kind of thing. Like, it both can be true. Like, you can establish a new antagonist that literally does have a connection for people who are aware of it, but set it up entirely new and explain it properly within the game itself. And so that might be where this heads. It's something that has been lurking in the background, and the people like us are going to go, oh, I know what that is, but other people, they'll just get the explanation, so it doesn't matter either way.
GT, I'll come to you then. Any character, villain you think could fulfill that role for you, if any? I mean, I think it probably will be a new villain, honestly. But if we've put our tinfoil hats on, anyone from the RE pantheon that would intrigue you?
I'd like to see the antagonist have a connection. Thinking back all those years to Morpheus D. Duval and, his frustration at being unfair dismissal from Umbrella. And I wonder if there's any, anyone from the past seeking revenge, or that's got a bone to pick with Umbrella. There's just any number of characters. I don't feel that anyone resonate more by their appearance.
No, and I think that's the tricky thing. I don't dislike the idea of a surviving Birkin at the bottom of the pot.
And that's my fear, that they introduced this new character that was like, I was the forgotten fourth founder of Umbrella back in the 70s, and they erased me from history and never talked about me. But, I knew Spencer and Marcus and blah, 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 and all that stuff. He's trying to get his legacy back or some nonsense.
They've done that. I think that's legit as well, because they've done that a few times with Simmons, haven't they? He was basically retroactively put into it, going, "Oh yes, I sorted all this out." Other candidates,
and North Sea was the fourth founder, yeah.
Well, so was Brandon Bailey,
and Brandon Bailey. Yeah, I mean, other candidates I put forward that they could return is Morgan Lansdale. We could get the vice president of Umbrella. You never know. I don't know. Whatever his name is from the X-Files.
If we get Rita, if Rita returns, all is forgiven as far as I'm concerned.
Could it be Spencer? Is that even feasible?
No. I mean, I've heard some people say, we could be back in the Mega My seat here, and the ruins of Raccoon City is just someone's vision, and that's how which I don't agree with personally. If you look at it logically, I mean, what's the situation going to be in Raccoon City? It was bombed nearly 30 years ago. It was sealed off by the government, so no one can get inside. It's constantly monitored. So how is another biohazard situation going to evolve in there? Unless some organisation, has embedded themselves underneath the ruins of the city and has rebuilt the nest or something, or the underground lab, whatever you want to call it. It's got to be more than 3 hours of Leon walking around ruins.
I'm almost imagining, I just kind of got like apocalyptic kind of vibes. I mean, it's going to probably take place, like you say, not long after, but just in terms of the environment, I almost kind of felt, oh, crikey, we're going to get like a Fallout 4 kind of, rival gangs battling for these wastelands, and it's going to be so combat orientated. But again, that's kind of the baggage I'm bringing with me from the previous installments. I wonder, though, how much, again, was just iconography for the trailer. Are we actually going to get a lot of the ruined Raccoon City in the actual gameplay? I doubt that. I don't know.
You know what I know for a fact they'll do is when you go back to Raccoon City, do you remember you've all played the Silent Hill 2 remake, right? Do you remember the parts where you get to a location that was in the OG game, and it does a little flashback of like.
I love those. They were wonderful. Yeah,
they're gonna do that in it. They're gonna do that when you get to a location, and it'll do like a ding ding, like a little jingle noise.
You see, that related back into the narrative in terms of it being a loop, and that's why I just felt it worked so well. I would love Capcom just to do something similar. Not exactly the same, but just something similar where you're a callback to the past, but at the same way, kind of informing the future or kind of being woven into the present narrative. Other than in that way, I don't quite know. how else you could do it. But if we are going to revisit some of these areas in this kind of derelict state, and we think back to when kind of the rumors for Biohazard Dash and return that beta for return to a derelict Spencer mansion. I don't know how much of the narrative it's really going to hold up, just revisiting the same areas, but just a more derelict state.
Can you see that area behind me beneath the red tinted sky? That is what's left of Raccoon City after the military fired a missile at it.
According to unconfirmed reports, the missile was allegedly nuclear. If this is indeed the case, then there's little hope of finding any survivors among the city's 100,000 inhabitants.
Well, I'm personally hoping, and I think Batman, you are probably in the same fence there, that a lot of it is set in this kind of hotel beginning bit. Sean, I think you're probably on the same page there. And as you said, perhaps a lot of what we see in Raccoon City, but it is something else entirely. We do see a kind of liquor type creature, I think, falling from the ceiling.
I saw one person speculate, could that be like the reimagining of the Suspended?
Suspended, yeah, that was my first thought as well. Yeah.
The environment that's in doesn't look like
it doesn't.
Suffered massive damage.
One of the interesting things that I found that the trailer sold to me was it flashed me back to a very can anyone remember that really super early concept of Resident Evil 7? And I think there was only ever one bit of concept art made for it, where you were going to be a new character. I think it was a new character. It was a couple of new characters. I don't think they were named. I don't think they were given any names. But you were going to be exploring a quarantine zone. And I think it was going to be Leon and Sherry were going to be on comms all the way through the game, like talking through it. And I almost wonder whether that could be potentially like Leon's involvement. Like if we're assuming like all the Leon is still in this in a capacity, like if Grace really is the lead and it's, please be sort of, some sort of investigation kind of game, like a mystery. Like I'm more than happy to have a legacy character supporting that in like a comms kind of role. I'm happy to have him on the radio, like talking you through it and stuff like that. I'm really curious as to what there's bound to be like two campaigns. Do we potentially have like a Revelations 2 split where some of it's set at the hotel and that's Grace's campaign, and then you explore the ruins of Raccoon as Leon, and like Grace's game is going to be first person and Leon's game is going to be third person action game. Could they potentially split it up so you're still catering to the people that expect a round out to the first person trilogy, because these art styles have come in threes generally. But then you also have a throwback campaign. I don't know. It's really, really intriguing.
Just pleased that they've put in, and something that we have long alluded to following the cliffhanger in Village, that they've put in someone relatively defenseless, because that is such a key component of Resident Evil, because you don't want to go gun-ho with Chris into a biohazard zone because it's not going to be particularly challenging. It's all right in short, sharp bursts, but an entire game I don't think is particularly survival horror-y. So yes, I agree with you, Sean, entirely. If we've got a long campaign with Grace, who's, has she just been told to go and investigate because we found another murder and we want you to have a look at the pathology, so to speak. She'll just take a handgun. Great. That's what I want to see. That investigation.
I just don't want to see a moment like, I happened to just watch Maximilian Dude's reaction to the trailer, and he sort of guessed at one point when like Grace is suspended from the ceiling upside down. Like Leon, the trailer will end with Leon kicking the door in, and like it's so true. We're so bludgeoned by that in the legacy of Resident Evil trailers, aren't we? That something like that's gonna happen. And if he is truly in this game, and they didn't tease that in the teaser trailer, like that's massive restraint from Capcom, and I actually applaud them for that. To not rely on like one of the core four, if you will, to really put the game in people's hands.
Can we try and guess some of? You've already started there, Sean. Quite a nice little loop into it, like gameplay mechanics of this. George obviously concerned about that. I don't think we know for sure. I don't think we can be confident. I've long said about Village was just on the limit for me in terms of survival horror action. I find RE4, as much as I enjoy playing the game, I don't find it particularly, for me, Resident Evil E, and I felt Village was just on that edge.
Well, the baby scared you, didn't it? The baby.
Yeah, I know, but there's just enough amount of not just scares, but in terms of ammunition management and there's enough elements or tenants, as George would say, for me to just remain on side with Village. I was worried if it followed the same trajectory as, say, 5 and 6, that this was going to go gun ho all out, and 6 just went. That never really. 6 was supposed to be, you play as Leon in 6, and that's the survival horror part. Really. Okay.
All of that. all the campaigns were the same in that game. No one can sell it to me any other. Yeah, I mean, this is what I worry about. That closing statement from Jeff was really telling at the Summer Games Fest when he said, I'll just repeat, he made it very clear that the game is not just survival horror. It's got, really exciting action in it as well, and it's like, there's a worry.
Well, didn't he also say there's like a lot of like investigation mystery elements to it as well?
And that's what I'm really looking forward to. Like, I really hope there's a real push for that. Like, I would just love it if like the hotel section was solving puzzles, collecting files, and you can do away with your combat. Leave all the combat to the other campaign if it is.
No, I think you're right, mate. I think it's going to be the first third of the game is going to be what we want, with like the investigation, the hotel, and all that kind of stuff. And then the rest of it is Leon just kicking out doors, shooting zombies. And it's like, oh, wow, it takes you back, doesn't it? Raccoon City, right in there. Co-op, let's go. Co-op, drop in co-op.
I would really love to see some sort of zapping system whereby, like, you can... I really hope Alyssa's section's playable. Like a playable prologue in the hotel, and they could do some zapping systems where, like, you can leave clues that you can find as Grace, and you can leave different clues on each playthrough and stuff like that, and see how it unfolds. See if Grace can reach the mystery of the hotel quicker if you manage to leave certain clues in certain ways. And then you've got like an almost kind of like throwback to flashback, the Outbreak scenario whereby Alyssa could unfold the mystery if she did things in certain ways, and like it'd be cool, man. It's not going to happen because nothing we ever fucking speculate happens. So
I would love that. I mean, the investigative element would play well in a slower pace, so that would be the survival horror in the hotel. And as Sean was describing that, I was just kind of thinking back to Silent Hill in the way that you have all the investigative elements within the room section, but then you have this whole explorative areas which are very combat orientated, particularly for a Silent Hill game. So if you kind of had the more action orientated Leon elements that were, informed and related back to whatever Alyssa's discovering in a slower paced investigative
so here we go
in the hotel. I'd love that.
For some inexplicable reason, there's typewriters all over the hotel, and every time you go to a typewriter, you're given, depending on what you found during Alyssa's section, you can type out different clues. You can, let's say, you can choose between out of one out of 5 clues on each typewriter, and then when you play as Grace, you can find the typewriters and then start putting together your investigation using like a fully featured file system and things like that.
That'd be amazing.
Different outcomes on every playthrough. It's not going to happen, I'm telling you.
So are you quite convinced then that we're going to get an Alyssa playing section?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be like the start of the game, but I think it'll be integrated in the same way like Mia's cutscenes were in 7. I don't think there'll be VHSs that you find, but like I wouldn't be surprised if at one point during Grace's investigation you find Alyssa's journal,
right, yeah,
and then as soon as she starts to read it, the game does like a zoom into the page, and then you play that section.
So this could tie in quite
through her journal, you play through her file or whatever.
This could tie in quite nicely to the established lore of Alyssa then, because obviously this hotel is it. Oh, I can't remember. I did know what it was called. Begins with an R. Renborn Hotel, something like that. That's obviously not.
I think it was called. It was Lakeview or something.
That's not in Raccoon City, but we know from 7, Alyssa continues her investigation. I can't remember her epilogue in Outbreak. Does she form part of the Raccoon trials at all? Is she part of the testimony? The witnesses. So post 2016, 2018 hotel, maybe a clue for her biohazard incident. Who knows? Rob, any other thoughts at all about some of the where you think some of the character story beats might go?
No, I mean, at this point, it's kind of I don't have anything specific that you guys haven't brought up. The only thing that's been probably the other thing, which won't make Sean. I think Sean's aware of this, and the doesn't make it any easier. Is the fact that there's some discussion around whether or not the creature zombie character reveal at the title is Alyssa, it's herself. That could be an interesting thing, again tying back into what you guys are talking about in regards to what the importance of the characters and what Grace's importance is to it as well. And so from that perspective, that could be an interesting, but it also kind of feels slightly cliched and obvious too, which is a bit, if they go down that path, you kind of be like,
it's on brand. It's on brand.
It is on brand. Yeah, it 100%. And I think that's the reason why people have been jumping to this conclusion, because it does feel very much on brand and very potentially obvious and cliche, but not necessarily a bad cliche, just a cliche.
But then how would they? I know what you're saying. Like Alyssa investigating hotel, murdered but not actually murdered, captured, infected, something special, daylight, whatever. That's a nice theory. How would they classify as her being murdered at that particular point if they don't have a body?
Well, I mean, sometimes it's like, yeah, that's the difference, because if she was murdered or there was she'd be missing, suspected murdered, like there was evidence to believe that she'd been killed, but we never come across a body. The discussion in the office wouldn't be the one that it is that we see. He would literally say, "We know your mother went missing, was never found again," would probably be more the thing. So, yeah, I think that's what changes the outcome of it. But the other element is we don't also know that she wasn't murdered and used in the sense. It's kind of like Resident Evil 6, like all of a sudden a bunch of Chris's team getting infected gets killed by an outside force, kind of like they got murdered. They literally were killed by someone else. So you would classify them as being murdered by someone, even if they got turned into a bunch of creatures or ashmen or whatever they were at the various points whenever Carla used the virus there. So the same thing could apply here, that we're actually seeing flashes of what happened to her. That was how she got murdered, and somebody had to kill her. We'll put her down to stop whatever it was. We don't know. That's
or she
one
faked
theory.
her own death because she was pursued by people.
Yeah, and then it turns out, and then it's a fake reveal, and it's supposed to be a misdirect, which is also a possibility. Like this is there could be some intent. There's some intent with that shot or not. Like Capcom could do either, and I wouldn't be surprised.
I have a question when it comes to Raccoon City. And if we're going by, the Ori 3 remake, is it possible we might stumble upon Nikolai's bones? Right? Because he could be there.
Well, who knows? Get out of there. Rob, what about your views on gameplay? Where would you like to see it sit?
I would like to go back to a third person title. I would. It's not like I hate the first person. I actually really do like them, but I think it's been a while since we've had a new title with a third person, and I really liked the Resident Evil 2 remake's gameplay loop. Generally speaking, there's a few things like bullet spongy enemies and a bit weighty, but generally speaking, it was nice to have a game like that after 7. So, and then we went back to Village of the first person. So it's like, yeah, it would be a nice change to go back to that again. But I'm happy either way. It's hard to tell, and the visual style of the trailer doesn't give any clues away as to what sort of style it's going to be.
I wonder if VR support is going to be a thing. I mean, Capcom have been a big proponent of VR for Resident Evil. They've probably been its biggest supporter in terms of AAA games. Getting that support could if it doesn't get VR support, i.e. not in first person, do you think that could be a potential nail in the coffin for PSVR?
They did 4 in VR with a separate it was a third person game, and then did it separately. So I don't know. It could be a hybrid kind of thing. I think the more interesting thing is if they just don't do it at all. Overall, it'll show that Capcom's going to no longer got any confidence in the ability to do VR, or not necessarily. That might be 50% of the options. The other option would be that literally that the changes they've made are just too technologically demanding to be able to do it in VR supported mode. Like there's an enhancement in graphics and style. That just makes it really difficult to get the fidelity they want in VR, which is also a possibility. But considering how robust the RE engine's been so far, even with its mild various upgrades over the years and the ability to put it into different genres, I don't know if that's as big of an issue as it was, because it was built with that in mind.
It's way better than the Unreal Engine 5 because you're getting, you play Ori 2 Remake, getting photorealistic graphics and lighting that's on par with an Unreal Engine 5, but you're not getting the terrible shitty performance with traversal stutter and all these other issues that Unreal Engine 5 has. What a shit engine it is. Terrible.
Well, the R engine's great.
It's great. Yeah.
Is this an REX out of interest? The new one? Was this the first game that's debuting in REX?
We don't know, but I suspect it will be. If it's not, it's a Bridgeway game that'll be using elements of it because the engine's constantly under redevelopment anyway. Like the development of the engine goes way back to post RE6, and VR was obviously baked into some of the design choices during RE7's development that was part of building the engine because that was the first game that they used it for. So it's always been forever being tweaked. So it's kind of hard to tell if that's the case. It's kind of interesting though because like I don't know if anyone's seen it. There's an art shot that Capcom released officially of the wide shot of the Raccoon City site, and it's if you actually look at it in detail, it's actually pretty low quality and janky. It's quite funny, but it's not about the official level of detail. It's the scope that it actually has. But of course, then you look at like the complaints around Monster Hunter, like most recent one, open world. Our engine did have some struggles with some of the open world tasking. So again, I think there are certain things it does better than other things, and so it's much like you're kind of mentioning the Unreal Engine before, John. But it's like the difference between what you use it for sometimes can also impart, because there's always a risk that if this is too big scope wise, it could have some of those same problems if they haven't fixed them.
I don't think this game's going to be on PS4. This looks a very high end game, and we've got the release date.
That pipe dream's gone now, Nick. Yeah,
I think so. And we've got a release date of 27th of February 2026. So when do we think we'll start getting more tidbits? What events are coming up?
Gamescom, yeah.
When's that?
I think August, September.
So that could be the first gameplay reveal.
That will be because
there will be. They said
playable.
Yeah. They Keeley said that the thing. Gamescom this year opening night is August 19th. The official date of schedule was 20th to the 24th of August. It changes slightly every year depending on around that time, but it's around late August, early September. But this year, end of August.
Finally over.
So long, Marcy.
Does anyone have any other kind of final points that when they're watching the trailer, they wanted to raise? I think I've covered most of mine, but go on.
I wanted to say about the date thing itself. I think that was the most shocking reveal. I shouldn't be shocked because obviously Capcom has gotten into this habit of only showing trailers kind of when they've got about a year or under for the game releases more recently. So the fact that once all of a sudden we're getting this reveal, it's like, well, then it's a good chance we're getting it next year. But my original thoughts, and I've made this clear on the Discord, was that I remember reading early that I'm pretty sure that Onimusha was originally supposed to be the new Onimusha game was supposed to originally be releasing early, and they showed that off earlier than this. And so they'd been planned that to be early 2026. And so I think that's been bumped. I think either it had development issues anyway, and so they were just like, well, this works out perfect, or they just went, we can give it an extra 6 months and it'll come out later in 2026, and we're going to put this out in time for the 30th anniversary of the franchise. So I think that's been a change that's probably the biggest surprise in my respect, that it's February. Like I was thinking they might do late March, just before the end of the financial year, get it out around the anniversary, but it'd be tight if they end up releasing Onimusha in like January, because they'll be having two very big titles for them within a few months. The other thing that we haven't even discussed is GTA 6. Like, it's putting in February, the sensible option, because any later than March, you're starting to get pretty toe deep into buzz of GTA 6, and that could have some massive impact, and it will. There's going to be a vacuum of games in the period around that coming out. I think it's a sensible timing on that regard as well, and I think that may also apply to why Onimusha hasn't been dated, because they're like, let's see how this goes, and we'll put that maybe near the end of the following year. I think we'll get more announcements next year of remakes, because I think we're on that train. I think we're going to get
That's the next
a
one.
30th anniversary thing, and it's going to be a bunch of announcements about remakes that are going to come out in the following year, or the following 18 months past this. But yeah, I can be very, very interesting for the anniversary year anyway. And this is a pleasant and much needed surprise.
Yeah, I think this nicely follows the sort of thing set out by RE7, where they announced it obviously June and it was coming out in the January. You know, they really have not to, you know, have like 4 or 5 year cycles where they announce something in 2005 and we don't see the game until 4 years later, because that was getting really tired.
The only exception
change so much as well.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if they had done, if the rumors about this one are true and they'd announced it in 2019 or something that they were working on it, and they showed some of it, it would have obviously been a very different game than what they showed this week. And I think the only exception they've done to that in the last 10 years has been the Resident Evil 2 remake, and that was just to really confirm that we're doing it. You know, that was it. Like, they didn't show anything, they didn't discuss anything. It was just literally a pre-announcement to say we are working on it. That's the only time in the last decade that they've really gone down of like showing something or announcing something so early out. And I think I think it sucks when we have to wait a long time for something like this for people. For some people, I don't mind personally, but you definitely see a restlessness within the community around longer waits. But when it hits, it pays off so much better like this because of it. So I think it's a good thing when we don't have. Once you announce it, you don't have to wait. You're not waiting 3 years. You go, cool, I get to see it, and within less than a year, I'm going to be playing that thing, and everyone gets excited. So yeah, I think it's a good strategy.
And Capcom don't delay with these things. I think they've been doing this since Resident Evil 6 as well. That was one of the early ones. Was
brought forward a month, if you remember.
Yes,
it was originally scheduled for November, and they brought it forward to October.
That's a valid point too, because the thing is that especially talking to Alex recently about like some of the games in the last, nothing that recent, but obviously is this, but like talking to him about some of the development of even coming up to the remakes and so forth. A lot of these games did actually get delayed, like Remake 2. Because of that whole process of them trying to figure out what it was and then scrapping and going back to that, they lost a year. It was supposed to come out a year or 18 months earlier than it did. And so, like, all these games have knock-on effects, and it kind of ended up just being fortuitous in a way that it ended up working online, where they ended up getting a game out almost every year for a while because all these developments kind of lined up. But COVID had an impact. COVID had an impact on this. I know that much too. So yeah, it's one of those things you can't always plan. So if you announce it early and then something happens, or the direction, something technically goes wrong and you have to figure out, it takes a lot longer, all of a sudden you end up looking like really bad when you have to go, so that game we were going to put out in February, now we're going to put it out in November.
Why do
or
people
we're going to put it out
act
in May.
though, why people act as though COVID ended last year? It's been done since 2022. It was years ago.
Yeah, but it's with a game like this, like a multi-year development, they were working on this since 2017.
The
whole COVID period is the one thing I know about this title, and it's definitely out there, and I definitely know this is something I can talk about, is when Resident Evil 7 came out, it had good but not great reviews, you may remember. It was reasonably well received, and it sold okay, but well below Capcom's expectations at the start. I think they were hoping for, I can't remember the numbers, someone will probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 3 or 4 million units, and it sold 2 to 2.5, which was good, but not exactly lighting on fire, and it had a slow burn effect. It really picked up later as people started to kind of spread, hey, it's really good. A lot of people were put off. So the initial reaction in Capcom was like, "Ooh, have we done something wrong going down this?" So they started developing ideas of what they could reinvent again in case they needed to, and that's where the origins of this title supposedly come from. In the end, it turned out that it wasn't like a Resident Evil 6 situation where the fears were like, "Oh my god, what have we done?" kind of thing. It turned out to be okay once they realized the dust had settled, the feedback was great, the sales continued. It had like an evergreen sales record, so they were much more happy with it, and that's why Village was allowed to become what it was in the end. This now, the development cycle, because Village wasn't supposed to be RE8 either, it was just supposed to be its own thing. So this inherently also adds to this whole mystique. They've been working on this and scrapped it probably, I don't know how many times, I honestly have no idea, but I definitely know that this is not the first version they did off of this game. And that bit, as far as what the internet rumors have gone around, is true, because I've been told that by 3 different people. So it's kind of interesting to hear all of this. come through. So yeah, even the files, I got press assets, and the press assets have, for the logo, have 2023 date on them. The file itself was created in late 2023. So the logo's been sitting there ready for them to put out in press assets for almost 2 years. So that tells you again how long development cycles are.
And it didn't leak. It's extraordinary.
It's good. It's good. Batman, do you have any other kind of closing comments? You want to add anything we've missed?
No, not really. I just hope, I mean, you know what I'm like. I just hope they don't fuck up the story. I like to think, given the level of detail we saw in that opening trailer with the whole scene in the FBI office, that Capcom are going to go all in on the story on this one. And I hope they bring Blue Umbrella back and finalise that storyline, especially if there is a Raccoon City connection. And if anyone wants to get in the mood for RE9, you need to dust off your copies of Umbrella Corps and play the police station level in that.
Excuse me, Mr. Sonny Bauer. I saw Sonny Bauer making this exact same comment.
Indeed.
Oh
set
my
in the
God.
ruins of the aftermath of the bomb.
Yeah. Okay then. Touche. I see your raise. I see your bet, and I raise you. Well, they hinted a Wesker return in that, didn't they?
Oh, fuck
the
off.
executive.
Yeah, you reap what you sow, man. You reap what you sow.
Well, go all out and put the final chapter on just to see Raccoon City's demise.
That was the joke I was going to make before. How long before Anderson and Miller start claiming credit for this?
What?
We did it first. We returned to the source. Back to Raccoon. We did it first.
John, I mean, I know. Just going back to that point you've made about the BSAA and whatnot. Like you previously speculated a few times on the podcast now that you would much prefer to see that storyline of Chris going to the headquarters in Europe resolved in a movie. You know, Resident Evil is now, you know, it's almost a trope at this point that they do a cliffhanger that's not followed up. So, you know, I pitch this question to all of you: where does the village cliffhanger now sit? Because that's set up as a cliffhanger. That's a cliffhanger that's left to be resolved. What you would think in the next game or the next spin-off or whatever, and it's, according to this trailer, just completely abandoned. There's not like even a hint that cliffhanger is going to be even addressed. So, yeah, the question I ask all of you is like, where does it go? Is it the basis for the next movie or something?
I can tell you where it's going to go. It's going to be like the end of Secret Invasion. They're going to ignore it, is what I think they're going to do.
So what you're saying is there's going to be a moment where you play as Grace go into her superior's office, and on the way you can find a newspaper that says stock prices crashed for the BSAA.
Yes, they're going to be written off screen like Kang the Conqueror, just written out. Oh yeah, we just dealt with that. The TVA dealt with the BSAA. That's what happened. Yeah, they just.
But we know they're around though, aren't they? We know they're still around because of Shadows of Rose.
Oh God, yeah, that's a good shout actually, Nick. Yeah, they must be. Because
of some remnant of them.
Oh, fuck. I think they'll just ignore it. If this is a Leon story and Grace and the BSAA are not necessarily involved, I think they'll just conveniently not make any mention of it. Unless they bring Blue Umbrella back, then it might be elaborated on. But they might even leave Blue Umbrella out of it. But I like to think they won't, given the Raccoon City connection. There's going to be some sort of Umbrella connection in there. It's inevitable.
Yeah, I must say, as a Sherry enthusiast as well, I'm truly delighted that they've, brought in yet another empowered, seemingly special young lady when she's just sat in the waiting room, ready to go at any point.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think we can conclude our preliminary discussions on Resident Evil Requiem. We hope everyone has enjoyed it. We will, of course, be keeping a close eye on this and probably covering it lots of the news as more and more things drop, so you hear our views as we get closer to the February release date, where we'll be reviewing it as we look forward to its release. On that note, we now turn our attention to this podcast edition of Neptune's Biohazard Quiz.
The ultimate test of Resident Evil knowledge returns. 100 podcasts later.
Jesus Christ. Fucking question, is that?
I'm getting a big fat 0 this week.
Yeah, I'm not going to get any of these.
I'm not going to say anything because I know if I do, you will just change the answer or something. Like, you don't even know what the answers are.
Can I just ask, have you had all of these questions independently verified?
and still things don't quite go to plan.
You only have to probably get it right.
Welcome to Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. Batman. Star Tyrants. George Trevor. Robbie McGregor. Mr. Spencer. Neptune Biohazard Quiz.
Welcome back, Mr. Spencer, specifically. Welcome. We've got a Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. You can clear your desktops. You can open up Notepad. We've got 5 deliciously challenged. Not too bad. They're guessable questions, I think, for this one. So here we go. Question number 1. In what century did Castle Dimitrescu begin its winemaking? Guessable. Question number 2. If the up key in Resident Evil 2 is yellow, what colour is the down key?
The fuck?
Question number 3. Who yields the wing shooter? Question number 4 is a timeline question, a welcome return of the timeline question. When does the events of Biohazard the stage begin? So that's quite hard, but maybe closest wins. We'll see how it goes. And finally, question number 5. In honour of Resident Evil 9, who is the named person in Alyssa's newspaper article over the Dolby disappearances? Who does she name as the missing person in her newspaper article? They're the 5 questions. Join us after this when we'll run through those answers.
Hit on the target, sir. Angel 1, both missiles are confirmed hits. Return to base immediately.
This is Angel 1, roger that.
Arrow 7 and 10, direct hit. Both Angel 2 and 3 have emptied their payloads.
Arrow 5 correction. In hit coordinates, west 0.5, south 0.1.
Roger.
This is Angel 6 reporting. Confirmed all fighters have emptied their payload. Mission code XX complete. Repeat, mission code XX complete.
This is Heaven's Gate. We got you loud and clear, Angel 6. Mission code XX is completed. All fighters return to base immediately.
Roger that.
Arrow 8, 11, targeting confirmation. Arrow 3, 9.
Welcome back to Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. Let's see how well everyone has done. Question number 1 is, in what century did Castle Dimitrescu begin its winemaking? Let's start with Stars Tyrant.
The 19th? I don't know.
The 19th century. Mr. Spencer?
I put the 14th.
Oh, big difference. 14th century. Romby?
15th.
15th century. George Trevor, what did you put?
No idea. I'm just guessing. I'm saying 17th.
7th. I love all the variation of answers here. This is all very exciting. Batman, what did you think?
15th.
Confident. And confidence is secured. Correct. It is the 15th century. The winemaking begins. Points there to Batman and Romby. Well done. Question number 2. If the up key in Resident Evil 2 is yellow, what colour is the down key? Batman, we'll start with you for this one.
Blue. Sorry, blue.
Blue. Okay. Stars Tyrant?
I am ashamed that I've been racking this over in my head and I have no idea, despite the fact that it's probably my most played game in the series, and my brain cannot comprehend this question. I have no idea. I'm going to pass because I can't say blue now because it'd just be cheating.
Well, say a different colour then.
Red. Red then.
You're going to go for red, okay, but Mr. Spencer, what did you put?
Am I allowed to just put what? Because I have an answer I wrote down, but can I just put what Batman put? Is that all right?
Well, I'd put down what you put down.
I'll put red, but say I said blue, right? Even though I type red, my answer's blue. I don't care about cheating. I'll do it.
Okay,
that makes no sense. Just
red. You went red.
Yes.
And George Trevor?
Presumably this is a remake, Resident Evil 2 remake question, yeah?
Nope.
No.
I didn't understand. Can you say the question? I didn't understand the question. Sorry, say it again.
So if the up key is yellow, what colour is the down key?
The up key. I'm going to be kicking myself because I can't think what this is relating to. I've got no idea. Green. I'm just guessing.
Green.
And I'm not going to say blue, so green.
I think that's everyone's answer. The answer is red. It is red, so points to...
Explain it to me, Nick. I've no idea what this is.
What is this relating to?
It's the left key for the...
Wait, hold on a minute. I put red.
Sorry. Yes. It points to Romby and Mr. Spencer.
Which is this?
Oh.
I'm completely lost.
Ah, thank God.
The station platform lift that goes between has an up and down key to go up and down, and they're two different keys and they're two different colours, and the name tags have a U and a D on them.
Oh crikey!
Yeah, in the OG game.
You use the up key.
Yeah, in the B scenario.
What?
I guessed that honestly. Yeah. I didn't know, but apparently it was right.
Is that do you use the up key in the control room then?
I think so. Yeah.
I'm just completely lost on this.
I just remember it having the giant, like the letters for the up and down had the big giant U and the giant
I've
D
never
on
noticed
the
that.
tags.
My God, in nearly 30 years, I've never noticed that.
Oh, I didn't. I thought it was the same key. If it was the B scenario, the character from the A scenario has always already put the key in, and you just have to turn it again.
No, there's a. Or is it the train one? No, it must not be the train. The platform one. That's the platform one that goes up and.
You are right, Rob.
Yeah, the little turntable thing
in the marshalling yard.
Oh God, you hear that? You hear that? Hold on, let me check.
Yeah,
I have no confidence in this question. And I scored a point, and I'm still calling it out. Okay.
Turntable keys. Yeah.
Turntable key. Yeah. No, I was right. I remember it's good.
Rob is absolutely spot on. The letter U is etched.
I remember the key. I definitely remember the key because there's a red one in the yellow one, and the yellow one has the U, and the red has the D.
Yeah.
I need to replay the game because I cannot see this in my head at all. This is. I know there's different key. I know there's keys that you put in. There's one you put in the control panel next to the train, and that takes you down. But don't you use a different one in the control room, where the save room is? You know, where the typewriter is.
We never have a quiz, do we, without controversy?
Usually, like once the answer's told to me, I can perceive it in my brain. I can see it in my, see it in my eyes, and go, "Oh yeah, I get it." But I'm drawing a total.
The down key. No, the down key is the one.
I've played over 100 times.
Yeah, the down key is the one you use to get down from the yard down using the thing.
It could just be the way the question's worded. The question may have been worded really poorly.
But when does the train platform go up in RE2? Are you talking Outbreak?
No, in the B scenario. In the B scenario, you have to bring it back up because the first character's already gone down on it.
That's done in the save room, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And that's where the key is. But that's the up key. That's the yellow one, and the down key is the one that you use when you first do in the A scenario to bring it up to use it to take down.
I don't think my brain has ever twigged that they were different. I think I just always had in my head that they were the same key or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now you've just explained it, Rob. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
We can always rely on Rob to explain my bullshit. Right, yeah, so points there went to Stars, Romby, and Mr. Spencer. Question number 3. Who yields the wing shooter? George Trevor, did you know this one?
Absolutely no idea. Wing shooter. It sounds like it's from Village. I've no idea. I'm sorry.
You guess a character?
Okay.
You never know.
The wing shooter. Simmons.
Yeah. That's fine. Mr. Spencer, did you know?
I know for a fact that this is a gun from Ori 6.
Oh.
This is from Ori 6. And I'm trying to think whether it's Leon or Sherry. I don't know. I'm going to go with Leon. It's probably wrong, but I'm going to go with Leon.
You go with Leon. Okay. Batman?
I honestly didn't know. It does sound like something from RE6, but now that John said that, I feel like I can't guess anyone from that game. So I'm just going to have to say pass.
Stars Tyrant, did you know?
I'm 90% certain it's Leon's from RE6.
So I'm thinking, yeah.
Romby?
Same, Leon, RE6.
It is Leon from RE6. Well done, well done. Rob's getting excited. He's got them all right so far.
This is where it ends.
Question number 4 was the timeline question. We'll come to Batman last. When does the events of Biohazard the stage begin? Mr. Spencer, we'll start with you.
I had no fucking clue. but I think Biohazard the stage was kind of, I want to say 1998, but that seems off. I'm going to just shot in the dark, 2011. Shot in the dark.
2011. Okay. Stars Tyrant, did you know? We big fans of the stage here.
I haven't seen it I probably haven't watched it since we did the podcast recording, so I'm going to go for the angle. That trick question, and it's 1998 because that's when Rebecca's storyline started in the series.
I will say, what? Because of the flashback?
Yeah.
No,
I did, Nick. I don't know. I can't answer the question, so I'm thinking out of the box on this one. To try and see through your ruse. I don't appreciate your ruse.
What, you go 24th of July, 1998.
yeah, because there's a flashback in it, and that's the earliest.
That was because of the way you worded the question, Nick. To be fair,
When does the storyline of the stage start? Well, it starts when Rebecca takes her first steps into the Biohazard world. I've got it.
Robbie, did you know?
I can't remember this at all. 2008. I have fucking no idea.
2008. George Trevor?
No idea. I'm trying to think what it was. It didn't have anything to do with the Raccoon City outbreak. I just kind of feeling it takes place early on, early 2000s.
Because there was a professor dude, wasn't there? Right?
Maybe before 2003-ish.
2003-ish.
Commit to a number, George.
That's fine. No, it's fine. Batman.
August 2010.
Spot on. Yes, August 2010. You put August the 12th in your timeline, which I'm just going to assume is right. But yes, August 2010 is 100%. So points to the Batman there. And finally, question number 5. Who is the named person in Alyssa's newspaper article over the Dolby disappearance? This is quite difficult. Batman, did you know this one?
Yes, because I actually read the file today to check the date.
Did you?
It's Helen Midkiff.
Helen Midkiff. That famous name. Romby.
I had no idea. Literally, I'd seen people sharing it and I didn't bother rereading because I knew what the reference was. Like, I don't need to reread that. Wish I had now. So, no, I wouldn't have got that. No
George Trevor?
Well, if we all knew it was Helen. What was that? Midriff. Midriff. No, I had no idea.
No idea. Mr. Spencer?
I just put Keir Starmer. I didn't know who that was in the file. I guess he went missing somewhere in Dolby.
Stars Tyrant?
Basil Exposition.
Unsurprisingly, Batman is correct. It is Helen Midkiff. Well anticipated, sir.
I thought for sure I would have gotten that right.
Well anticipated. Let's have a look at those final scores. Joint winners today, ladies and gentlemen, with an impressive 3 out of 5. It is Romby and Batman. Congratulations, you two. That is a good win for quite difficult questions. So well done. Joint second is Stars Tyrant and the returning Mr. Spencer. Well done with an impressive 2 out of 5.
It's all right, not bad.
And George Trevor, sadly, he goes the way of most Eurovision entries. It's nil point for him.
You know, stick to Silent Hill, mate.
It's what the Resident Evil gods have served up. I was so ungrateful about the trailer, wasn't I?
Well, that finishes the podcast. Join us next time and we'll have some more questions. So we are fast approaching the end of our Resident Evil 9 Reveal podcast. We hope everyone has enjoyed it. As I said earlier, we'll be continuously monitoring RE9 news, bring it to you as it drops. Coming up next, we have our Happy Birthday Resident Evil 4 podcast, where the team replays Resident Evil 4 from beginning to end. I think we mentioned that actually in the last podcast, but we always said Resident Evil 9, it's going to be the emergency podcast, and that's what's happened. But I can assure you that the next podcast will be our Happy Birthday Resident Evil 4 podcast, full of tips and tricks and how did Neptune survive that. We'll go into that in more detail. But I'd like to thank everyone for listening. It is goodbye from me, Neptune.
Goodbye from me, Batman.
Goodbye from me, Stars Tyrant.
Goodbye from me, George Trevor.
Goodbye from me, Romby.
Goodbye from me, Mr. Spencer.
So we captured you in a photograph. And when the stars came out, your mother called your name. But when the morning comes, we'll get